everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about how to use Hügelkultur in your typical garden. Now, many videos I see, people are talking about doing it on a very big scale level. Using massive logs and making sure it lasts for like a decade, But for the average gardener, let's say you just have some raised beds, or maybe you don't, maybe you have it in the ground. I'm going to show you how you can do that just casually, and it could last you a couple years. What is Hugelkultur? It's a method where, at least common Hugelkultur is a method where you get logs, thick branches, leaves, you put them on the ground, and you build a mound of soil over top. Now what that does is over time, it starts to break down. The fungi starts to make the wood spongy, retain moisture, break down. So over the years, not only do the logs retain water, but they also break down and add to the soil. So it's like a natural fertilizer that happens over time, and you don't have to do anything to it. So what we're going to do here is we're basically going to follow those rules, but on a smaller level. Many people, dig a big trench first. I'm only going to dig probably a couple inches down past my raised beds so that I can still fit some decent sized branches, and it will probably only last me a couple years. What I'm going to do, and what you can do too, is I'm going to get a mixture of very old dead branches and newer branches, almost freshly cut, or maybe just recently fallen. Maybe I'll cut a couple off a tree. Another reason Hugelkultur is great is because it increases the life in your garden. Not only are you going to have your vegetables and your other plants growing, but you are going to have your worms coming through, your bacteria, your fungi, and beneficial ones, And that's great because really it makes you feel good as an organic gardener just to be able to have sustainable life within something that you produce. And this is a great way to have that. A way Hugelkultur is different than just regular composting is Hugelkultur deals more with fungi, where composting deals with bacteria. So, if you want, you could always mix the both. If I was doing Hugelkultur, I wouldn't have nearly as much compost. But if you're like me and you don't like buying so much soil, and your soil is predominantly compost, then feel free to throw it in there, That's what I'm going to do. And hopefully over time I'm just going to get more and more better soil. That's the problem with up here where I am. I'm on a mountain, which deals with a lot of clay and rock. I don't have good natural native soil. So I have to go the extra mile to really get my ground growable. If I were to plant a tomato just straight into the ground, I wouldn't get much. With my Hugelkultur bed, I'm also going to treat it as almost kind of like a compost pile. Now, I know I said they were different before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my browns and my greens. And if you're new to that and you don't know what the browns and the greens are, don't overthink it. Browns are like the dead branches and logs and the dead leaves, right? Brown. And the greens are more like your grasses, the vegetables, like clippings, slices that you just kind of save in a compost bowl or whatever you have. And together they complement each other, the browns and the greens, to then make a nitrogen-based and a good carbon-based soil. And it's perfect for your plants. So I'm going to do that here, especially because it's on a smaller level, and I'll bring you along for it. So I went the extra mile to dig a little bit lower, allow those bigger logs to fit in there, just like I said before. I did that not only to fit the bigger things, but to really improve the soil quality below the ground too, and really allow my whole plan to last longer. Because with Hugelkultur, the bigger the log, the longer it'll last. If you have a tiny little branch, that's going to decompose within a year. That's not going to take long at all. But if you have a thick log, that's definitely going to take a few years. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the wood and I'm going to place them within the trench that I dug, probably to about halfway up the raised bed. So I'm going to go from underground, I'm going to build the wood up to about halfway through my raised bed. So what that's going to allow me to do is save money on soil and really kind of help revitalize it year to year. One good thing about Hugelkultur is that you don't have to till it from year to year, because the soil will be revitalizing itself. If you think about it, the worms are going to be going through, eating the branches, coming up through your new soil, dropping the particles and their waste going through. The bacteria is going to be living throughout. The fungi is going to create a great little environment, where the bacteria and the fungi are working with each other. Okay, so now that I got the section cleared out where I want to use Hugelkultur, I'm now going to get some wood and I'm going to place it down. Remember to dig a little bit lower if you're using thicker branches, because you don't want it sticking above the raised bed. You grab your logs, just place them in like that. Doesn't need to be fancy or anything, just place them in and cover them with dirt. Alright guys, so now that I've put the amount of wood that I want to put in my bed, I'm going to mix it with that green I was talking about earlier, which is just some tall grass I found around the yard. Now that I put my greens down and I have my browns, which is those thick logs, I can put my dirt over top of it. Now, I separated my good dirt from the previous season and my, clay, rocky mountain dirt that I dug into in order to build the trench. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the base layer of the rugged, rocky dirt. This will just kind of help, hopefully, revitalize this soil, turn it into something it's not. And then I'll finish it with the layer of that good soil, so that either way, it'll work just fine. So now that you put all your new dirt in, you put the logs in, you put that grass in there, or whatever type of green you have, that's it. Your Hugelkultur raised bed has been completed. And you can see how much higher the soil ever rise. You can compare what I did here to the rest of my garden, the rest of the raised beds over here. Look how low that is. And over time, sure, the soil level will drop, but one, not nearly as much, and two, I'm just creating great soil, and it won't be nearly as expensive than if you were to buy bags of soil from the store. So that's my video on Hugelkultur. Stay tuned for the next Ninja Gardener.